Hello, welcome. Thank you for watching another webinar. Will to play, focus training, professional training, awesome training, diligent training, Revit management training in this case. So, as you know, we're in session 3. The first 2 sessions of the class are really just trying to skim the surface of what you're getting into as a Revit manager. Now, I know that I went through a lot of that kind of quickly. The second session on the Revit Management class was the Revit Manager Manual, and as I was showing you the slides, I would talk about other stuff besides the slide. Why? Because these are just the topics. These are the things that you want to be aware of within your Revit Management book. And there's a lot more besides what I just included in that. It was just kind of giving you an outline, what you want to think about, what you want to deal with in terms of where's your what are you doing for a Revit management book? What are you doing for a Revit user book? How are you communicating the knowledge that you're getting here? How are you communicating that to your users? How are you retaining your knowledge? That's kind of what the question was. So, if you have access to the Will to Play site, I would have definitely downloaded, possibly printed, possibly copied and pasted back into a Word document so you have all text there. Stolen my content in some way, shape, or form so that you can take good notes. Yes, I'm aware of that. I had the great conversation with somebody yesterday because I'm looking over all these outlines of like classes, what training classes do you need to go through, what are the topics, and it's like all the topics are the same. They're the same tools. Nothing new has been invented. It's just how do you reorganize all this data to make it a little more user-friendly. So I'm perfectly fine with you borrowing my content and using it. So please do. Don't reinvent the wheel. That's what I do. So central file, local file. This is kind of what happens when you get into a situation that you need to have more than one person work on your project. So as a Revit manager, you're going to have a lot of different issues within what's called a workset enabled project than you would in just a regular project. Why? You've got these things like what workset are they working on? Are they opening based off worksets? What do you do with the naming convention of the file? Where is the file saved? Who has access to the file? Who's cleaning up the project? Who's making sure that all the walls are drawn on the right workset? What's the name of the workset? Right? We have all this vocabulary that we need to understand. And then we have some naming conventions, file locations, we have that workset things. What I'm going to go through is basically what are the key pieces when you're dealing with a workset enabled project, that central file, local file. What words do you need to know and what do they mean? Then what concepts do we need to apply for you? Okay, so first set of vocabulary, central file, local file. The central file sits up on the network. It's protected, it's pretty, it's saved. It is not read-only. I would go ahead and write that down. Central file is not read-only. Neither one of these files. The local file is not read-only either. There's no way to really protect your central file. Now, this may be a shock to most of us managers. We want to protect things. This is the holy grail. This is the most important thing. The central file is the most important thing for your project. But you can't protect it in the traditional manner. And by protect it, I mean lock it down. You can't lock down the central file because everybody needs to read, write to it constantly. If you're all right with that, we're good. It makes sense. You have to have it. You have to be able to read and write to it. So therefore, you can't apply read-only. You can't set a permission to it. That means that the file location, the folder location that it's buried underneath, all of these need to be able to be accessed by your user. Oh no, I have no control. Well, it's all a false sense of control anyway, right? We don't really have any control. There are some things you can do to use that word protect again, but now protect as in standardize. Protect my standards, protect my layers. Right? Within the CAD drawing? No, we want to protect some standards within the Revit project. There are ways to do that within the central file And we get into that eventually. We'll talk about that. Then you have this whole idea of the local file. The local file sits on the C drive of the local machine of each user. Each user has their own local file. And these local file and the central files conversate. So this is where you as a Revit manager, a BIM implementer, director of technology, need to have a conversation with not just your users, but your IT people as well. How many people have an IT department? Raise your hand. We got like 30, 40 people here. So how many people have an IT department? Awesome. So if you're somewhere in the 20 to 100 person firm, you should have an IT department. You should have somebody who's looking at your hardware. You should have somebody who's looking at your network. Somebody who's looking at your network. How heavy is this? How heavy is this on your network? What's your network traffic? Because every time somebody has multiple central files, multiple local files open, they're all hitting that central file. So you've got user 1, 2, 3, 4. All of them have the local file open. All of them are chattering with the central file up on the network. So these are some things that you need to be having a conversation with other people in your office about, which is the central file and the local file. Now you've got things that you need to know, then you have things that you need to address within your office, such as how do you deal with your network traffic. Okay, let's talk about the central file just for a minute. Let me get out to a network while I do that. If you have not just taken the minute to jump out to the help files, skim over what a central file is, a local file is, that would be a little pre-work you may want to do, a little post-work you want to do. There's a lot of information within here, but let's see. Maybe you see my network. Let's go ahead and go to some resources here, because this is where my network is. Not really, it's not my real network, but just an example of where these central file could be sitting. Of course, it's going to be sitting up on your server, right? I'm going to go ahead and just rename this one just so you can see it. This is the local file. Is going to reside on the C drive. That's why I have that C drive there, is because that's where the local file is going to sit. The server is, of course, where you're going to have your central file and other standards. Everybody like how I do that? Like, pretty, yeah, it's like, oh, that makes perfect sense now. Okay, so within your server, you're going to have a couple of different ways of setting up things. Do you have it set up as company standards? Do you have it set up as CAD standards? Do you have a project server? Now, is your project server sitting underneath your company standards or not? Right, all of these questions need to be answered. And there's no way I can answer them for you because each office has their own set. So I know companies that have, a computer sitting in the back room. That is their standards computer, meaning that it has all their Revit standards on it, all their CAD standards on it. And then they have a project computer. Then that has all their projects on it, right? Different network shares. However you have it set up, eventually you'll get into your project's servers. Or, in this case, let's go ahead and look at our summers sessions. Because we had multiple projects, right, over the summer. Within the BIM support folder, we have our Arch files. Now these are what? Are these where our projects reside? Are these where our standards reside? So depending on what kind of company you have, how big you are, how many computers you have that are set up as your servers, some people combine the BIM support as my Revit project standards, my company standards, my Revit, and so both the projects, the standards, and all the other information that I need in order to run a project. In this case, we're going to look at it in terms of an office that has their own specific project server. And then underneath that project server, we get into, well, where is the Revit project? Let's look at 2010. Then you have your project number. You get buried under that, right? So this is kind of how you want to set up your network. Do you want to have the 2010 there? Do you want to go by 2009? Do you want to just have your current project folder structure? Whatever it is, you're going to have your projects broken down. So here's the side note before I move on. Do you break up your project server as in a current project folder